at birth, you were pushed into computer science.
Right, I didn't even know it.
You didn't even know.
Hello, and welcome to Innoverge's STEM and X.
This is our guest speaker, Angelique Taylor. She's a visiting research scientist at Facebook Reality Labs Research, where she explores augmented and virtual reality technologies, starting position as an assistant professor at Cornell University in the summer of 2022. She has a PhD in computer science and engineering from the University of California, San Diego, a Bachelor of Science in electrical engineering and computer engineering from the University of Missouri, Columbia. AS in engineering science from St. Louis Community College. Your work in the intersection of computer vision, robotics, healthcare, and artificial intelligence design intelligent systems that enable robots to interact and work with groups of people in safety critical environments. We wanted to congratulate you on your upcoming position as an assistant professor at Cornell. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Angelique, would you like to introduce yourself? How did you get into the STEM field?
Sure, yeah. I'd be happy to answer your question. So I actually got into the STEM field kind of early on. So I was really interested in like math and science growing up, and in high school, I majored in electrical engineering. And so that's when I started to get interested in like engineering disciplines. Kind of started for me in high school. You know, I was building circuits, and I really enjoyed those types of courses, and just kind of continued that into college. And I actually started to enjoy my coding classes more in undergrad. And so then for my PhD, I started to focus on computer science. So here I am today.
That's really awesome.
I'd be happy to share some slides just to talk about some of my research as well. Should I just go ahead and share my screen? Or?
Yeah, that sounds great.
If you could just enable screen share.
Make you co-host. Okay. Awesome.
Great. So Layla, thanks again for that lovely introduction. So I'm a robotics researcher, and I work in the field of human robot interaction. And so my field aims to build what we call intelligent systems, such as robots, that can work like side by side with people in like everyday settings. And so Layla talked about all this, so I just go ahead and skip this. So my work is really kind of centered on like efficient and safe decision-making for complex autonomous systems, while reasoning about uncertainty in real-world environments, particularly those involving human interactions. And so the field of robotics is really growing at like a fast pace. We're seeing robots in many like everyday settings. We're seeing them in hospitals, schools, malls, even in people's homes. And many of these environments, a lot of studies show that in many of these environments, people interact with each other in groups. We like to work in teams, you know, and we do this in like everyday settings. You know, we walk in groups, we work in groups, we interact in groups. Right. And so robots need to have this like understanding of us if they want to like actually interact with us in a fluid manner. They need to understand groups. And so my work really focuses on how we can enable them to fluently assist us and interact with groups of people in the same environment. And so my work in particular focuses on designing for safety critical environments. So these are very complex, like non-deterministic spaces where people often have like high workload, and they're under time-sensitive constraints, and they must make these really important decisions under uncertainty. And so some examples include like emergency medicine, disaster response, assembly and manufacturing. And so here, a key problem is what we call operational failure. And so this is when a person doesn't have like the supplies, the equipment or information that they need to complete task. And so these failures can be like physically devastating, like cost tens of billions of dollars annually. And far more troubling in medicine, it can lead to like grave patient harm and death. And so my work really focuses on how robots can help, right? And so there's been a lot of great work on human robot teaming in these spaces, including supporting first responders, deploying robots in hospitals. And really the vision is for robots to free up time of skilled workers, such as people, so that they can focus on tasks that they're good at, like complex problem solving, dexterous manipulation, human interaction. These are things that us as humans are good at. And robots, they can help with like distracting and frustrating parts of work, like delivering materials or fetching supplies. And so when designing these systems for these spaces, we really need to design these systems to be fast and accurate. They need accurate perception and decision-making systems, particularly for safety critical settings, where even the smallest mistake might cost someone their life. And so like within this space, the two questions that I've been primarily interested in during my PhD are first, robot perception. So how can we kind of build these systems that enable robots to kind of localize and track their teammates while the robot is moving in the environment and people are moving in the environment. And this is like a really hard problem in robotics. It has remained that way for a long time. So making headway here can make a really big difference. And then the second question that I'm interested in is with regard to intelligent decision-making. And so this really focuses on how do we build, intelligent systems that enable robots to contextually navigate in these safety critical settings while considering environmental context. And so perception, decision-making are not like new problems in robotics, but when you add like human teams to this environment, this is when it becomes a very interesting and challenging problem space. And this is particularly what I'm interested in my research. So I'll just give a brief like overview of a few projects that I did like throughout my PhD. And I'll just kind of go through all these kind of quickly since I know we have a lot of other stuff to chat about today. So first, I built this group detection system that we call robot-centric group estimation model, or RoboGym. And this really enables robots to detect their teammates from an egocentric first-person perspective of the robot. So you can imagine a robot has a sensor on its chest or something, and this is the data that's coming out of that camera. And so here I really kind of leverage the intuition that people within groups are typically spatially close to each other, and they typically have like the same motion goal. And so I captured this intuition in my system. So I capture these distance metrics within images that can help us cluster people into groups. And so this figure shows a high level overview of the system that's providing this video stream that we see here. And so it outputs these bounding boxes around groups, where the green boxes show us where the groups actually are, and the red boxes show us what RoboGym is outputting here. And so this was like a really great first step to enable robots to like detect their teammates. And in subsequent work, I aim to improve upon this system to improve its performance. So after exploring the problem group detection, then I built on that work to design this group detection and tracking system. And so this really leveraged the intuition that temporal information is really important to kind of capture group detections that are like consistent over time. And so I wanted to kind of explore how we can leverage various like egocentric like image features. So we look at various like distance metrics that can help us cluster these people more accurately. And then we use like a common filter to basically track people over time. And so unlike prior methods that typically require like multiple sensors, typically they need like a LiDAR and like a RGBD sensor to do this problem. But here we just have a single sensor. You only need color data, and you can track groups pretty reliably with this system. And then in the next phase of my research, I was really curious about how we could deploy some of these perception systems in real world environments. I really was interested in the various challenges that these systems could help address. And so I began to explore how robots can support teams in acute care settings. Like other safety critical settings, acute care is characterized by being very complex and non-deterministic. And so these people typically have like very high workload, time-sensitive constraints. And so here a key problem are the operational failures I talked about earlier. And so we really started to kind of focus our attention to help nurses in this area. And we really wanted to focus on how we can empower nurses because they're really kind of the primary patient advocates for patients when they visit the hospital. And a lot of times, because of asymmetrical power dynamics between physicians and nurses, often nurses are penalized for kind of pointing out mistakes made by physicians or people that have more power than them. And this can often lead to, for example, patient infections or patient deaths. And it really just leads to patient harm. And really this work is aimed to kind of reduce those patient safety risks. And so we kind of engage in this like design process with nurses across the US. And they express how they would design RoboGym or the tracking systems that I showed earlier to kind of support and empower them in these settings. And so we came up with these kind of design guidelines using the findings of this study. And so most of the participants that we talked to, that they talked about how nurses with little experience for performing resuscitation codes, which are basically a code to help you like revive a patient or do some kind of operation on a patient to support their health. And they must rely on like reference cards as they're kind of treating this patient. So they're going back and forth between like a reference card and trying to like treat a patient. And it's like a very chaotic situation. And so my participants really envision like a robot that could like autonomously navigate to a patient's room and that can help a team of clinicians perform resuscitation code using RoboGym. And so they really wanted this system to kind of also support like real-time like error identification. They wanted it to alert the team whenever it identifies errors. And they also wanted robots to help with choreography generation. So basically helping people stay out of each other's way when they're trying to treat a patient at the bedside. And they wanted the robot to kind of allocate people to different positions around the patient's bedside over time. And so this study really kind of shed light on investigating, you know, how like when you're designing these systems for robots, we really kind of need to take into consideration that there are some hierarchical power dynamics that are going on that we need to consider, which can really impact patient care. And so following this work, I was really interested in kind of taking my work away from inpatient wards and kind of centering on emergency department, particularly during COVID. And so my lab has really been working with a lot of EDs here, emergency departments here in San Diego. And what we learned from them is that they really wanted a robot that can support supply delivery, particularly when they need like all hands on deck, right? When the patient is coding, everybody kind of like rushes over that patient to try to treat them. And so this is when they really think that robots can really make the most impact, because they typically have to have a person from the team go get supplies. And if that person can actually stay there while the robot goes fetch supplies, then this can actually help save more lives. And so when we started work on this research, we went to a local ED and we found that they often put patients' beds in the hallways. And these are like overflow beds. And often if a robot is navigating near these patients, it might actually interrupt patient care because robots typically move slow for safety reasons. But in this case, it might actually lead to a safety risk. So we want to focus on that. And so to address this challenge, I developed a system called Safety Critical DQ Networks, or SafeDQN. And so this is a social navigation system that enables robots to deliver materials while taking patient acuity account. And so basically it can estimate how acute a patient is by observing a team of clinicians treating a patient. And it basically uses two intuitions. It uses the intuition that typically when there's a high acuity patient being treated, the healthcare workers are typically moving very fast and quickly and chaotically. And they move more chaotically than they would if they were treating a low acuity patient. And second, typically for high acuity patients, they require more resources than a low acuity patient. And so we kind of capture features within image data to help us estimate how acute these patients are. And we designed this system that can estimate the acuity and then use this knowledge to enable a robot to automatically find a path that such that it doesn't encounter these very critical patients, but instead will try to navigate near these low acuity patients. And so in the future, we plan to deploy the system on a physical mobile robot in our medical and simulation training center. And to the best of our knowledge, this is kind of the first work that really looked at how we can take a patient the severity of their condition into account for navigation systems. And so we're hoping that this inspires other robotics researchers to focus on safety critical environments where these are also kind of human-centered environments. And so we have to take the people into account when we're kind of designing these systems. And so moving forward, as you mentioned, I'll be starting at Cornell in the summer 2022. I'll be responsible for teaching courses, participating in outreach, publishing papers, and helping other students pursue their PhD. So I'm really excited about this new venture, and yeah, I'll be happy to take questions.
Wow, that's really, really cool. And congrats again about Cornell and everything. That's awesome. So we do have a couple of questions. You sort of answered a few of them in your slide, but we can also go more in depth. How did you find your interest in the intersection of healthcare and AI? I mean, I know you talked about high school and really enjoying coding, and where do you think it really stemmed from, your deep interests of everything?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Like the journey I took, it was kind of like a step-by-step thing. Like, in high school, I knew I wanted to do engineering, so I majored in engineering in college. And then in college, I knew like I was majoring in engineering, but I'm like, yeah, but I kind of like computer science more. And so for my PhD, I did computer science, right? So it's kind of like it like progressed as I went through this process of like pursuing my education. And I don't know, it's interesting, like in retrospect, like when I was applying for the PhD, I remember working on my personal statement. And you know how you always have to have like a personal anecdote. And I was really struggling to find one. So I remember like getting so desperate, like I called my parents, I called my dad. I was like, Dad, I'm like, like what happened, like, when I was younger, like, why did you guys have us? I'm just trying to like, come up with anything that could just help me figure out like,
what do I put? What do I say?
And it turns out that my dad actually, he was planning to go to college, but then he ended up having me and my siblings. But he was going to go to one of the best technology schools in Missouri, University of Missouri. It used to be called Rolla, but I think it's called like Science and Technology now. And he was going to study computer science. And I was like, what?
Like you were,
how did I not know this? Like, how did this never come up in my whole education? You have not mentioned that you were interested in this field that I've been like working in, and so, it really it's interesting. I feel like I was kind of living vicariously through him, but he didn't like tell me until we talked about it. I was like, really? That makes a lot of sense now, because I really thought I was the oddball out. Like all my other siblings are like in healthcare. And so my brother's like in business, but he wished he was in engineering. So now it just all makes sense,
You were like built to be a computer science major. Like you at birth, you were pushed into computer science.
Right. I didn't even know it.
You didn't even know.
Exactly.
That's crazy that like all the pieces kind of just fell together perfectly, but you didn't even know that they were coming together. It was like,
right. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, I can't get over that. That's so cool. You were like, what do I put? And your dad was like, oh, actually, I was really interested in computer science too. And you're like, wait, how did I never know this?
It was crazy. It was a revelation. I will never forget that.
It was truly meant to be. Like everywhere that you are, it was meant for you to.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's awesome though. It's great because now I can even like have like technical conversations with him, and I'm like, what? We could have been talking about this all along, and
like opened
like
up.
he actually understands like what the lingo is and stuff. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I did not know.
It opened up like a whole new avenue for y'all to connect on a deeper level too. Because
yeah,
even whenever you were talking about all your research and everything that you've done, like it was just so interesting, and you were so excited to talk about it. So I know like you guys can connect on that also, which I'm sure makes you love it even more because you can.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. And even like people in my family, a lot of people in my family are like in healthcare, and it's like once people in my family see people doing well in healthcare, then more people want to like get into healthcare and stuff. And so whenever I'm coming up with like ideas for research, like I'll like run it by them, and I'll like, would you guys be interested in this? Am I just getting all geeky about something that just like sounds cool but won't actually make any kind of impact, and they really kind of set me straight a lot, and it's nice because then I don't waste my time on this problem that, will not actually have any impact, and I think getting perspectives from different types of people is very helpful. Yeah.
I think even a follow-up question to that, how do you come up with your ideas for what you want to research?
Yeah, it happens like over time. I mean, research in general is like very hard, and there's a lot of like ups and downs, and you just kind of get used to it. Like the PhD kind of like trains you to get used to it. So like people that have gotten their PhD, is like we kind of like all have this kind of like common struggle that we went through, and now it's helped us like be better researchers, right? And it's like a struggle that we went through, but we came out of it and we learned so much from that experience, right? And for me, like I'm very motivated by problems that are happening within, communities of color. I'm very motivated by problems where people's lives are being lost, and we can mitigate that in some way. I really just want to work on things that are impactful and can make some difference in people's lives. And a lot of times that requires you to take approaches that, maybe others wouldn't have taken, or maybe you're stepping outside of the bounds of what your field is because people don't want to cross that line, and for me, I'm like, well, why is the line there? We need to cross these bounds, right? Like there's so much research being done in like high socioeconomic status areas, but not enough done in low, socioeconomic areas. Like, why is that? Why do we do that? And we should be challenging ourselves to go to those areas that need the most support. Stop focusing your efforts on areas where they're already doing so well. Like, right. There's so many people that need help. Like, let's figure out how to help those folks. That's what inspires me the most these days, research-wise.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, really interesting. My mom has a PhD in higher education too, so I know what you mean with the research. She talks about it a lot too. And even what you were saying about like, let's go to communities where we can really help people and make a change rather than making the gap even wider. Let's try and even everyone out so everybody's on an equal playing field in terms of what they need and what they're getting. So that's like, I really resonate with that, also wanting to make everything even on an equal playing field. Like let's really work to do that. I think that's important.
And I think we're seeing like the impacts of when you do forget about people. We're seeing it, in politics. We're seeing it in our healthcare systems. We're seeing it in our educational system. These kind of systematic like barriers that have been put up that, some people, want to talk about it. Some people don't want to talk about it. And, we just need to talk about it. Like, how can we fix it? Like, what's the harm in exploring that option?
Like, let's lay all the cards out. Let's talk about it. Let's stop pretending like it's not happening. Oh, right. It's not going on. Like, let's have a conversation.
It is happening. And let's,
right.
We don't have to agree, but we can have a constructive conversation where maybe at the end of it, I understand your perspective a little bit more and you understand mine.
Exactly.
And that's what it's all about. Like, that's what, human interaction is all about. It's about, learning from people's experiences and empathizing with people. And, we have to remember to do that. And, I think as humans, like it's human nature to kind of be out for yourself or whatever. And we have to like fight that as much as possible. Like just as much as possible, we got to fight that because we just have to figure out how to help each other, and give it back. And like, for me, I'm taking time out of my day for this fireside chat. And I do this because we got to give back. Like we have to, I care very deeply about, making sure that people know that there's a path for them that maybe they hadn't thought that they could just pursue.
I think
So
especially because all it does is it takes one person who looks like some little girl or some little boy out wherever, and they see it and they say, wait, she can do it, I can do it too. And
yep,
then you've engineered a whole path of people who are going into a field that however many years ago they never thought that they would be in.
right,
And I think even exposing people to things they never would have known they could have done before
right.
is just as important. And yeah, I think that's also what Innoverge is really about is having a platform for people like you who want to give back and who want to meet people and talk about what you're doing and the strides that you're making, for those children and even those adults who see you and say, oh, I want to be like her, I want to do that, like what she's doing is amazing, I want to be like that, like I just want to do that.
Yeah.
um
And I remember like growing up, like in high school, um, like in my high school, it was like a technical high school. So we had like majors,
oh
and
yeah.
my major was electrical engineering. And I remember like, being the only Black girl in class. And my high school was very diverse. Like my high school is very diverse. And so it was interesting. Like, I mean, of course, it was mainly males. And I remember like throughout like high school, and then when I went to community college, and then when I went to a four university, when I went to the four university was the first time I actually met a Black female electrical engineer, was in college. And so up until that point, in my eyes, I'm like, I'm sure there's some out there, but I feel like I'm trying to do something impossible right now. But I don't care. I'm still gonna do it. I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna do this. And so it's like not seeing someone like me didn't impede me. In fact, it motivated me to want to do it even more. But I feel like if I did have that, then that would have been monumental for me, because it would have had me, I would have had a mentor, I would have had somebody that could give me the perspective of this trajectory I just actually went on, and could have gave me some inside scoop from a Black female's perspective, right? And that is very valuable, right? And I think it's great for people to have like role models and mentors, people that they can go to. For me, like I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have the mentors that have helped me. For example, when I was just on the job market interviewing for, when I was interviewing with Cornell, right? And there were so many people that just kind of rallied behind me to help me and support me. And everybody needs that. Everybody needs a community. You can't do it alone. And don't try to do it alone. It's too
Right.
hard. Build a community, build a community of like-minded individuals, people who are pursuing similar things that you're interested in. Learn from their experiences and apply that to your own journey. And that's how you can kind of do this step-by-step process that I went through, right? Like, and that's exactly what happened, right? So right now it's Cornell Tech, and I'm so excited for this opportunity. So, but yeah, I encourage folks to, seek out mentors wherever you can, keep in touch with them, send them a little note every Christmas or something to, remind them of who you are. Cause when out of sight, out of mind, like keep in touch with folks, because later on you will need them. Yeah.
That's incredible. I go to technical high school here in Houston too. So, but ours is arts based, but I totally know what you mean, like the majors and everything too. Where are you from?
I'm originally from St. Louis.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. A lot of these questions I know we kind of touched on throughout the past kind of 20-ish minutes, but also kind of how did you arrive like at each step? I know you said, you had your stepping stones, like you started here and you said, oh, I like this, I'm going to go here. When did you kind of realize kind of where you wanted to go? Did you know starting out whenever you first went to community college, straight out of college, that you were going to end up here? Did you kind of have an idea this is where you wanted to go? What kind of stimulated each of those jumps that you kind of made?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I guess so. Even in community college, I was kind of thinking like, ahead almost, and trying to think of like what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was always kind of like a question mark. It's like, okay, well, maybe my classes will help me figure that out along the way. But I know ultimately I wanted to like get a graduate degree. But like knowing like who I am and kind of being like real with myself, I'm like, okay, you can either get a job after you graduate undergrad and maybe go to night school, get your master's. And if you want to go forward, I mean, you probably have to quit your job to go get the PhD or something, right? Like, and just go pursue the PhD. And I knew like at the time I was kind of like a morning person. And this is just how I was thinking at the time. I was very much a morning person. I'm like, yeah, there's no way I can do night school. There's no way I can do night school. So I was like, you know what? You know, if I do the PhD is actually free. And for a master's, I'd have to pay for it, you know, most likely. I was like, yeah, okay, it's a longer term commitment. And so like, this is what I was thinking in my head. I was like, you know, and I'd still be a student, so I wouldn't have all those responsibilities like that you have to have if you're not a student. So, you know, all these things were like kind of going through my head. It's kind of like the procrastinator and also like the productive person in myself was like, okay, well, yeah, I should probably just do the PhD. You know, let's just get it done. And that's the highest you can go, right? Like I won't have to go back to school, you know? And so, yeah, so that's kind of like what I was thinking, like whenever I was making decision of like, okay, should I do the PhD or not? Because I had like a job offer because I worked at the Boeing company in St. Louis for like 3 summers in a row. And so they made me an offer. And so I was excited about the offer, but I also didn't really know what the job entailed. And so it was really kind of like a weird kind of offer. And so I was like, you know, and I feel like I could make more money than this. I'm like, yeah, let's just go back to school. Let's just stay in school, you know, forget it. We'll just stay in school. And so it all worked out. I mean, the PhD was actually like, it was like a stressful experience, but it was also like fun. Like I got to travel a lot. Like it was the first time I like went abroad. Like I remember one summer I went on like 5 trips. Like I went to London, I went to Portugal, I went to Nagoya, Japan. It like so much travel. And then I've also traveled like, you know, within the US a lot too. And so it's all like free, you know, and so people don't like think about these things, but you know, there are like some perks when you get the PhD. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed those and the kind of community that I built when going through that process. Cause you know, it's kind of like you kind of find your people and you all kind of struggle together, you know, and those are the people that you stay in touch with like after, right? Like they'll be your friends for life. Like they have to, because we have this common struggle that we can all always kind of relate to, right? So I know that was kind of a long, convoluted answer, but
About how many years were you working on your PhD? I'm assuming you said you went like kind of all the way through straight from undergrad to your PhD. How many years was that kind of?
in all it was about 5 years.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, 6 years. It was supposed to be 5,
Okay.
but it ended up being 6.
And you made it.
Yeah.
That's
It's interesting getting the PhD because like every time you go back for the holidays, you go back home every year, people are like, so when are you gonna be done? So when are you gonna be done? So when are you go? And Wolvers did ask me that because people think it's like undergrad, or they think it's actually like a master's, but master's like 2 years.
right. There's no set time that you're done. You just kind of
do like 3 times that. So,
yeah.
yeah. At that point, I'm just like, consider me a professional student. Okay, just leave me alone. This is my job. Okay, this is my job. I have a job. Yeah.
I know we talked about you saying stay, kind of your advice, stay in touch with your mentors. How do you find partners or mentors to work with or collaborate with on your projects?
You know, it's interesting because some people will kind of reveal themselves not as a mentor, but as an advocate, which is a type of mentor. So like an advocate is someone who's like your cheerleader when you're not around. And I discovered a lot of advocates, even for myself within this past year. Like when I went on the job market, I found that there were people kind of talking me up, when I wasn't around. And it led to some like great opportunities for me. And mentors are people that I sought out. So, maybe I met this person in the past and they, put a little bug in my ear, like, hey, if you ever need some help, or if you ever need anything, or just to talk, or, some advice or whatever, call me. Right. And those are the people that you keep in mind, right? You follow up with them after that encounter and you say, hey, it was so great seeing you earlier today. I remember you mentioning that I can come to you for advice, and I look forward to doing that in the future. And then you can do that in the future, right? And so small encounters like that are important. Pay attention. People might be lending themselves to you, whether you know it or not. And so you got to pay attention and kind of take those when they come. And then there are also people that, you just interact with who seem like they would be good mentors, right? Like maybe they're on a trajectory that you want to be on. And so you can either formally ask them to mentor you, to help you do what they're doing, or you can just befriend them, and depending on your rank or whatever, if it's like a professor or something, you should probably ask them to be your mentor. But yeah, so like these are all kind of different encounters that you will have, that you kind of have to like make sure you're paying attention, and then also keeping in touch with people. I remember for my PhD, I reached out to my undergrad research advisor. I reached out to my community college mentors. I reached out to other like mentors, like an undergrad, and they actually showed up at my PhD defense. And it was so beautiful. It was like a beautiful moment where it all came full circle. Like all my mentors that like helped me like throughout my journey were there to see the end product of what they helped me achieve, right? I did not do this alone. I did it with the help and advice and mentorship of so many people. It was a team effort, right? So yeah, that's what I'd say in terms of like finding mentors. And
Yeah, that's really awesome. Like it's so interesting to hear your journey and your story, and how you like figured it out along the way, but you also kind of had an idea of where you were going, and just like trying new things, and being open and following up on mentors, because sometimes that's the hardest thing to do when someone's like, if you ever need anything, call me, and then you say okay, and then you never call them because you're nervous or you're scared. But it's good, and I think interesting to hear that you actually followed up and you called them, and you tap back into those contacts, and it benefited you in the long run because you finished. So, and they all came to support you, and they were behind you 100% of the way.
yeah, and they love to hear from prior students, right? Like they love to hear about people's journey. They love to hear about how they made an impact in your life, right? In general, especially when people work in education, like it's a service for the most part, right? And so the quality of this service is like what creates the byproduct of these people, right? Like you are helping create them, right? And so your service is what helped this person, and people want to know that it actually meant something, right? That they're actually making a difference. And so they like to hear back from their students, right? Like keep in touch with your mentors, your teachers. They love it. They love hearing back from their students.
And then now just kind of some rapid fire, some fun questions. Would you rather fight a zombie or a vampire?
Zombie.
Really? Why would you say zombie?
I've been watching a lot of Walking Dead. Yeah, I definitely say a zombie, because they're not as smart, and vampires, they can move all fast and they can like seduce you. And so the zombies, they're like, okay, and you want to get away from them as fast as possible, just like stab them in the head and run, so I prefer that because they're not as skilled,
I definitely feel like we know more about, like we have more of an idea of vampires too. So I feel like, or we know more about zombies than vampires. Like we don't know what vampires can do, but we know what zombies can do, and it's very little. I think I'd say
yeah. And typically vampires are like depicted as like very strong.
Yeah.
And Yeah, so if you're out of shape, you're done for.
What is your favorite candy?
Ah, You know, I don't really have favorite candy because I don't really eat much candy these days. But when I was younger, I really like Nerds. Nerds was like my favorite. Yeah, I remember I had a phase where I was like eating them every day, and yeah, I had to pay for that recently. I would not do that. It was not a good idea. Yeah, but I absolutely love Nerds. I haven't had them in years, but when I was younger, that was like my favorite candy.
I feel like I never hear people say nerds are their favorite. Wow.
Yeah, but that was when I was younger. Now I can't really do it. Like it's too like salty on my tongue, and so. But when I was younger, yeah, I love me some Nerds.
Okay, trick or treat?
Trick. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like that makes sense. You really like robots. Like I feel like you could do something really cool with that too.
Yeah. I just like messing with people, you know. Yeah, if I had to choose, I rather like crack a joke on someone. That's more fun for me.
If you could transform into one Halloween monster, what would you be?
Halloween monster. Monster. I don't know. Monster. Like who? Like who? Like give me an example. Like Frankenstein or something?
Yeah, I feel like Frankenstein, maybe like Pennywise. Like I think the pillars of scary Halloween.
Very up to date on this. I'm sorry. I'm like, what are my options?
It's okay. What about like your favorite like if you were to dress up for Halloween, like you have all the time in the world, anything you could ever need to build the best costume, what would you be?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm really bad at this.
Okay.
I'm also just not very much into Halloween.
Follow-up question. What is your favorite holiday then?
My favorite holiday, I would say, is Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah. The family always gets together and my mom gets us a lot of gifts. Yeah, I remember one year, like we met at like another family member's house and she had this big couch and it was like a bunch of gifts on it. I was like, oh man, she must be giving out gifts to people who come to visit. And so I was like super excited. I was like, okay. And so at some point, my mom's like, all right, all my kids come over to the couch. And so I'm like, wait, are these just for us? And she's like, yeah, like this is what we're meeting for Christmas. So I had to bring all your gifts. I feel so bad for everybody else that came because
it's like sorry, my family
like handing out gifts to like all of us. And it was kind of awkward. It's like, well, she's my mom, so she should give me gifts.
Right. It's like, sorry, we normally do this at home.
It was kind of awkward too. But that's just to say, like, I gotta go home, right? Because my mom, like, she always has a couch full of gifts.
Yeah. Or else it'll end up like y'all are at someone else's house. And
right.
Sorry, guys. Okay, well, I don't know if this question still applies, but like, do you like scary movies?
You know, I used to be really scared of scary movies until I just like realized it's just a combination of sound and light. You know, so yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I like them. Like they're okay. I don't dislike them. There you go.
Okay. Do you have a favorite one?
Scary movies. Not
What's
really.
like your favorite just regular movie, like just movie?
More recently I've been watching like the Annabelles and those types of movies, the scary ones with the doll.
Dolls terrifying. They're so terrifying.
It's just like, okay, you're moving the camera, especially since like I've been doing like computer vision like research. So I think about like cameras and stuff. And so I'm like, oh, okay, you're moving the camera back and forth. And
Moving
like,
that, yeah. The logical side comes in.
Now I know what they're doing. Now I'm not scared. I'm like, oh, okay, I can think logically about this now. instead of like with my emotions.
Okay. Have you seen Squid Games?
I have.
Okay. Which game would you choose to play? I haven't seen it. I need to watch it. Everyone's telling me that I need to go.
I definitely wouldn't do the one where they can like fall off and die off of the ledge. I definitely wouldn't do that one. They have to get from one point to the other, and like there was different types of glass, and so if you picked the wrong glass, you like fell and died. Definitely wouldn't want that one. I don't know. I feel like the first one was probably like one of the easiest ones. But people just were like so disoriented. They didn't know like what was going on. But I think that was probably like, that probably would have been the easiest for me.
Okay.
Whenever like you just have to move forward and like stop in time. Like,
oh, okay.
You know, and just stay still, but people like move. And if you move during that time, you get shot.
Oh.
I guess the first game, yeah.
If I watch it, I'm gonna rethink of this conversation. Like, I think this one is the easiest.
Yeah, yeah. And then one of the games, like they paired everybody up, and like only one person in the pair like survived. So I definitely wouldn't want that one.
No, that's like 50-50. And you feel like you killed someone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Okay. Last question. Well, who are the major, like, do you have any major influences in your life? I mean, I know you said your dad and his connection with computer science.
You know, I feel like it's like at this point, it's just like a conglomerate of people that have like inspired me and who are also just like doing like phenomenal like work, like research. Yeah, I think for the longest time, I had the hardest time like figuring this out. Like, who are my role models? I don't like, who do I look up? I don't really look up to anybody. You know, I'm just, you know, trying to figure this thing out. You know? And now I just found so many people that I've met throughout my PhD, and a lot of them I feel like are role models, and I can learn a lot from so many people. You know, I think it's all about learning and continuously like to learn throughout your life, and being willing to change, to adapt to, you know, this world that we live in, this crazy world we live in, you know? Yeah, so yeah, I won't name names, but yeah, I have some role models.
Unless, do you have anything else you wanna share before we wrap it up? That's the last kind of rapid fire question. Do you have anything else like you want to say to our viewers or listeners, anything like that?
Sure. Yeah, you know, I just encourage everyone to not be afraid to pursue your dreams. You might not even know what your dream is. I still don't know what mine is, so don't feel bad. But to pursue your goals, right? I think that's more accurate. And, you know, just really figure out like, you know, you don't need to know what you want to do 10 years from now. You need to know what you want to do 5 years from now. You just need to figure out, you know, how to get through the phase you're at right now. You know, do your best, you know, and then figure out the next step, because it's all you have time for if you want to actually do well in whatever you're trying to pursue, right? Like, just do well, do your best in whatever you're doing. Keep pushing forward. Don't give up on your goals, and you know, find mentors. Don't try to do it alone. Please don't try to do it alone. You always got to find a community, find your people. That's ultimately what will help you achieve your goals, whatever they may be.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to all the viewers for listening. Go read the Innoverge newsletter with membership program, regional director. Follow us on social media. And then where can they find you? Like your Instagram, website, anything like that?
Sure, yeah. You can find me on my website. It has everything there, all my social media and everything. So, and my research at angeliquemtaylor.com. Yeah, and thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you for coming. It was great. Like, this is really, really awesome. So
great. Thank you. All right.